Wake up, rethink the status quo. When you get your money right, then you're the one who runs your life. Come build a wealthy spirit with Sammy and Michelle.
Sammy, I feel like we get along so well that people just love when we debate or we have a fight. Which, if that's the case, we need to invite them into our apartment a few more times.
Trouble in Paradise? They love to watch it.
I love that we're sharing one of our most popular episodes, The Great Debate, Sabbatical versus Fire. One, sure. I like that people like the spiciness, the topic, the fact that, especially at that time, you hadn't even taken your sabbatical yet. We were sort of genuinely taking a look at the idea of, do you wait for hitting financial independence to retire early or take a sabbatical? And I'm a little surprised at the reception that we received with this episode. But I also think listening back to it, there are so many timeless nuggets for people to consider if they're thinking about an unconventional way of moving forward in the future.
I had not even planned my sabbatical when we recorded this episode. And looking back, whether you're doing a sabbatical or whether you're planning for FIRE, the truth is a lot of us want to take time off of work. And I will say, taking time off of work has completely changed my entire perspective on life. And it's made me able to do simple things like going to San Francisco for my mom's colonoscopy that improve the quality of my life and allow me to be there for my important relationships.
Since you weren't considering taking a sabbatical when we had this conversation and then you did, do you feel like that means I won the debate?
Ooh, I wouldn't say I wasn't considering it. I just wasn't planning it. And I would not say you've won the debate.
We'll let the people decide.
Let's get into today's episode. Today we are talking about the great debate, sabbatical versus FIRE.
Ooh, yes, Sammy. I am very excited about this topic because I feel like there seem to be people who are interested in leaving the workplace who almost fall into two camps. Camp sabbatical and camp FIRE, if you will.
I will. And I agree with you. It almost seems like there's two different archetypes of people. You've got your sabbatical people and then you've got your FIRE people.
Exactly, Sammy. And when I think of a sabbatical person, I think of this woman that we met. Picture this. It's a beautiful day in Sonoma, California, at a classy winery where Sammy and I are wine club members. Yes, this is back when we were living the high life. We were there with a couple of our girlfriends, taking them around, letting them see wine country. And as we're in Artesa, sipping our complimentary wine tasting, this couple starts chatting with us. And this Indian woman and her German husband start telling us about how they were in Italy and Greece and going to Thailand soon. And they were just stopping through California to go to a wedding. And I was so shocked by this. I didn't really understand this lifestyle. And I asked her, what do you do for a living? Classic jobby mindset.
So jobby mindset.
And she was like, I'm on a sabbatical. And I was confused. I was like, I thought professors went on sabbatical. Does she have a kind of job that lets her go on sabbatical? Then I was like, is she just not working and she's just using that term? And then years later, when I would decide to leave the corporate world and go on my own sabbatical, I remember thinking about her. And I was like, oh, it does just mean not working.
I remember them too, Michelle. And I remember I loved them. Like, I always thought of her as like an idol, like somebody I'd want to be like. She was kind of like an Elizabeth the Eat, Pray, Love, except like in Europe instead of India. Because I imagine, as an Indian person, you can't really do that whole Eat, Pray, Love and get the same experience in India.
Let me tell you, we have Eat, Pray, and Love in India, okay? It is a different experience. Okay, first off, you are eating you're going house to house, auntie, giving you samosas, giving you pakoras, giving you vada. And guess what? You have to eat it because culturally it is insulting to not eat Indian people's food.
Even if you're full.
And there was a lot of praying, okay? Dad's family's Catholic, mom's family's Orthodox. We went on like pilgrimage, I feel like, when we were like 5, just like doing all these things. And the only type of love was them trying to arrange our marriage to the next door neighbor. So,
And smothering.
Physically smothering us with love, which is great, which is lovely. But yeah, it was nice to hear about seeing somebody who looked like us, who was kind of doing this lifestyle that was new. And I was like, oh, this is very cool. I want to do it one day. Ironically, when I did take my sabbatical, I decided not to travel, but I was still very inspired by that mindset.
Yes, that woman was Sabbati goals.
Yes.
On the other hand, we have the archetypal fire person. You might imagine them with a spreadsheet, tracking every expense, being a little bit miserly when they're at the grocery store, bicycling to work.
I don't have to imagine, Sammy. I live with that person.
Yes, except I don't have a bicycle.
You did use my bicycle when you were in San Francisco, which...
Yeah, but not for work.
Not for work. And you got trapped at the In-N-Out because you went too far and needed water and then had to go inside and beg them for water, which is a whole nother story for a whole nother time.
Yeah, Michelle's right. I did have that problem. But the typical fire person, they seem as more like the type A. They're less laissez-faire compared to the sabbatical person. They're on a mission, but they're kind of like head down, and they're kind of just plowing through until they reach their happy fire end.
At least that's the stereotype, Sammy. And that's what we're going to examine today. Is there a better option for you? Is there a better option for society? Let's get into it.
Sabbatical versus fire.
Let's get down to the basics really quick. What is a sabbatical? Because this was a question I had. And one reference that I really enjoyed looking into for this conversation, Sammy, was the sabbaticalproject.org. This is a website put together by DJ Didana that was actually referred to me quite a few times by people who had done sabbaticals or heard about mine, and it's no surprise why. DJ is somebody who has done tons of research on this. He has a TED Talk on taking sabbaticals. He's been in Times, The Atlantic. He is the sabbatical guy right now. And so it was really interesting to read through some of his stuff and get some ideas for how you should approach your sabbatical. But the basics when it comes to a sabbatical is basically just taking a break from the corporate world, taking some time off. It doesn't have to be a specific definition of how you use it. It's just taking time off. It can be paid, it can be unpaid. You're just not working is the point.
A sabbatical, you may notice, doesn't have any financial requirements about how you're going to support yourself, which is a little bit different than FIRE. FIRE, Financial Independence Retire Early, refers to the concept of saving up enough money so that you can live forever, or at least until you die, without having to work. So for people who are approaching financial independence, they're usually working hard, saving a big portion of their income, and then using that big portion once it forms a giant nest egg to then fund the rest of their life without having to work.
In my mind, Sammy, it's interesting, Sammy, because I think one of the first key arguments for taking a sabbatical is that you don't have to have as much money saved up. It's not like you're working to get $1 million, $2 million, whatever it is for your 4% rule. And I think that's so nice because when I decided to take time off, I was leaving a really stressful job. I was not interviewing at the time, and I knew I just wanted to take some time and breathe. And so I did a couple things to lower my expenses. For example, moving at home with their mom and dad in a 2-bedroom apartment, and Sammy. Those were money-saving things I did, but I didn't necessarily have a specific number goal I feel like I had to reach. I just worked backwards. I said, okay, I have this much in my savings. I have this much in my checkings and in my investments. If I didn't work, that would last me 1 year, 2 year, depending on how low I could get my expenses to be. So I think a huge advantage for a sabbatical is that you don't have to chase this number, get into the spreadsheets, as they say. You can sort of just take a look and say, all right, I'm leaving my job by choice or being forced out of it, and I think I'm going to take a break, and I know I can afford to do so, but I don't have to hit a certain goal to do it.
And Michelle, I think that's why a lot of people see people who take sabbaticals or sabbaties as a little bit more laissez-faire compared to people who are in the FIRE movement. Because yes, people who are taking a sabbatical could have a decent amount of money saved up. They may even be almost FIRE, but their focus is not on becoming FIRE or retiring before they take a break. They're taking a break almost regardless of how much money they have, although I'm sure that plays a role.
Exactly, Sammy.
As someone who is a little bit not laissez-faire.
Some might say type A.
Yes, some might say type A. For those of us who maybe want a little bit more of a security blanket, the idea of FIRE might resonate a lot more. With FIRE, by the time you're leaving work, you have enough money that will last you for your lifetime. So it's a really great option for people who are more risk averse. Like knowing me, I'd feel a little bit uncomfortable on a sabbatical because I'd be all worried about how I'm going to make money or when I have to start making money. Like those things are not things I could just ignore.
I can see that, Sammy. But another advantage to taking a sabbatical is that, sure, you can save and save and save until you have this FIRE number. But sometimes I feel like that's a moving goalpost. And I think the biggest concern is that you can actually go through burnout. The biggest advantage to a sabbatical is breaking up your working years, doing even like a mini retirement, if you will, and not working yourself so hard. Like I remember when I was at my last job, I was working nights, I was in Zoom meetings, arguing to keep my job. Like it was just so stressful. And for me, what I realized, I was like, I need a mental break. Like I would try to interview at the end and I could barely hold a conversation because I would just get upset. Like I was not in a good place. I really think I almost cried once on the phone. And that's when I was like, you know what? I think maybe if I can afford a little bit of time off, I should take advantage of it. So while I think there's an advantage when you're risk averse, which I totally am, I think also like if you have the opportunity and you're starting to feel that your work feels like more dreading and you've got the Sunday scaries and you're like, oh my God, my manager put a meeting on my calendar without telling me. And then I got myself all worked up about it, prepared. And then they canceled 5 minutes before. And you're like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm just saying it might be a good time to take a sabbatical.
I totally see that logic with a sabbatical. I think a lot of FIRE people do burn out, especially in like that middle part of the journey that's just really the grind.
It's true, Sammy. Also, sometimes I think when you start to look at people who are in the fat FIRE movement, which means having the most amount of money possible to live your best life, it's like they just keep saving money. So I think it's good to have a nest. Like I had a nest egg. Like I'm not that person who was like, I'm just going to go and make it work and take out a bunch of loans. Like I for sure had a nest egg. But I also see people who just, they could take time off and then they keep moving that goalpost more and more and more and more further away. And I think that's where sometimes the criticisms with the FIRE movement come in. Your spreadsheet heads, if you will.
I know a big factor for me in why I'm doing FIRE or why I'm choosing more of a FIRE path rather than a sabbatical path is my student loans. And I know a lot of people with loans or debt might have a similar feeling, which is that they don't want to not work when they've got this giant loan looming over their head.
Ah, the classic loan loom.
If you're my friend and you've asked to hang out, you probably have heard me say something like, we can totally hang out after April 2025. Or I'll be so free after April 2025.
When she says friend, she means sister.
And that's because April 2025 is when my student loans will be forgiven. So I graduated PA school, excited to work, but with $164,000 in student loan debt.
I really thought I could do the whistle.
You did.
Continue.
And fortunately for me, I took the path of doing the public service loan forgiveness. So with public service loan forgiveness, you work at a nonprofit for 10 years and you give them like usually around 15% of your income each year. And at the end of the 10 years, they'll forgive whatever is left over on the loan. So the great thing about that is, I can give the government 10 to 15% of my income each year, but I'm still able to use other parts of my income to save and invest for the future. So it's not like I'm having to try to pay down this giant lump sum as soon as possible and not get to invest and not get to, spend on my lifestyle and those kind of things. But with that said, with that large loan over my head, I don't think taking a sabbatical would feel that great for me, because part of me would know that I'm just prolonging how long I'm going to have these loans looming over my head. Like, I just want to get that over with as soon as possible.
I get that, Sammy. I don't have any loans. I've paid off my student loans, my cars, those kind of things. So I get it. Maybe you don't see yourself on like a grassy swing in Bali, enjoying the fresh air and the mountains. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, what if the government implodes before the student loan gets forgiven? Jesus Christ, what am I going to do? Maybe you feel that way. I don't know.
And another benefit of FIRE is while you are working, while you are saving up, you are kind of like a little angel investor on your own projects. For example, for me, I'm able to work on this podcast. I'm able to look into things like writing, and I can do that all while I'm still getting paid. So there's no pressure to like be a raging success. I can just do the thing, do the art, and just enjoy the process while I'm working.
I will say, Sammy, that is something I say to people a lot of times now. Like if you're in a job that you feel like you need to stay in for a few more years, or for whatever reason you're not leaving right now, I will say like what I realized when we were podcasting for 2 years and when I was like building my writing is that a lot of things take time to take off. So for those 2 years, I wasn't making money. And so while I was excited to have the time to pursue my own projects and make a career transition, yeah, it would have been nice to also have an income, for sure. Like, I don't look at people who are making money and also have side projects and think, ha ha ha, you idiot, you working monkey. No, I'm like, that's nice. You get to pay yourself to work on your side things. And I don't think that's a bad thing either. At the same time, like, I don't think I had the capacity when I was working full time to start something new too. So it really depends on like the type of person you are and the work situation that you're in.
You know, one argument I hear a lot about for sabbaticals, which I'm reading about in my book, Die with Zero by Bill Perkins, is that it's good to use your money when you have the health and stamina to use it. Because I think a lot of people would argue that in the FIRE movement, people are waiting for a later date to start like spending their money and really enjoying themselves. We can't guarantee how tomorrow's going to be, and we just might not be as physically fit or able to do the things that we're able to do today. So Bill Perkins really argues that we should use our money in those times where we actually would want to use it and explore and do all kinds of things that would require money. He recommends using money while we are actually fit and vivacious, and we would actually want to do things that would require money.
I hope I'm vivacious into an old age. But I hear you, Sammy and Bill. I think it's true. When I think about right now and taking time off, a huge driver for me was that I'm single, I don't have kids, I can move to the middle of nowhere with my sister and have to go to a vending machine to get water every day.
Thank you.
And I have the capability to do that. I know today that that's something I have the ability to do. I can live on a little bit less. I can make sacrifices. And why not? Why not now? Why wait until 10 years, 20 years when I don't even know what the future looks like for myself or for my loved ones even?
And when you say why not now, I have a why not now. Okay, and that's because when you're young is the best time to invest.
Ooh, this is a tough one in my mind, Sammy. Because, okay, so I took a sabbatical right around the time that I was turning 30. And one thing I will say is that I, through my 20s, made a decent amount of money, put that into my 401k, put that into my savings. I even moved a good chunk of my money into my investments when I went on my sabbatical. And here's the thing. If you understand compounding, which if you don't, check out our episode on compounding. But if you understand compounding, the thing is that the sooner you can put money into your investments, the sooner you can put money into things like your 401k, the better. $10,000 going into your 401k when you're 23 versus when you're 33 versus when you're 43 versus when you're 53, it's a different amount. It doesn't compound the same way. Like you're going to have way more money, which is just crazy to think about. And for me, when I went on my sabbatical, I realized that technically speaking, I was coast-fire, which meant that if I don't put another dollar into my investments until I'm of retirement age, I can actually retire with enough money and be okay. And it's kind of hard for me to tell people who haven't made those investments yet, like, hey, why don't you just put that all on pause and go live your best life? If that also means that you're taking away time from your investments. It's a fine line because you could always argue that you should be investing money and it's an opportunity cost that you're going to have to weigh. But I think one thing with the FIRE movement is you're actually putting your money into investments as early as possible, which is always going to benefit you in the long term. And there's nothing wrong with a little long-term thinking.
When Michelle finished her first year of sabbatical and she told me that she actually made money that year, I was actually a little bit shocked.
Wait, this is true, actually. Sammy reminded me because I forgot, but my first year of my sabbatical, my expenses were so low. I was living with my parents who so graciously I didn't have to pay rent. Honestly, I wasn't doing that much. Like, it was like 2021, like still
the
kind
woman
of...
spends like $0.
I'm kind of just like a low spender. And my net worth went up because a ton of my money is in investments. And it went up higher than my expenses. And I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about. This is what it means to be FIRE.
I'm like, remember all those FIRE meetings I was dragging you to? Like, this is what we were talking about.
That's that like click moment, you know? Let me tell you, 2022 was not as good to my net worth. But in the long term, hopefully something like the S&P 500 keeps going up and my money will continue to grow. So it's kind of crazy to see. Like, if you can actually lower your expenses a good amount, even for a little bit of time, you might be making your money back in ways that you're not expecting.
It's true, Michelle. And aside from the eighth wonder of the world, compound interest, another reason...
Einstein.
Albert.
Shotty Albert.
Another reason I think FIRE is a better path for me is because with the type of job that I have, being in healthcare, re-entry into the workplace is not as easy as it might be with other jobs. For me, my job involves keeping up with like multiple licenses, keeping up to date on what is being practiced in medicine, and then also just practicing medicine day to day. It really does keep everything fresh. In medicine, a lot of times we talk about skills atrophy. Atrophy usually refers to things like your muscles. So like when they become weak and you look all skeleton-y, that's kind of like muscle atrophy. But skills atrophy is when whatever those skills that you have just disappear with time because you're not using them. As we like to say, if you don't use it, you'll lose it.
That's a great point, Sammy. I fully agree with you. I do want to say, if Build a Wealthy Spirit listener are thinking, oh yes, my skills are going to atrophy, let me tell you, it might not, okay? Because sometimes I talk to some people, for example, me in sales, I realized I was like, oh man, if I get out of sales, like what's going to happen? How are they going to hire me? I'm like, no, I'm not going to forget how to like sell people things, okay? I do it for funsies on my free time. Like, those are not like things that I have to worry about my skills atrophying. And there's no licenses. Like, I've seen no slowdown in my LinkedIn emails because I've been taking a sabbatical. So it could really depend on your field too. But you got to be honest with yourself.
Yeah. And so for me, something like more of a slow taper off rather than a start, stop with working and not working would work a lot better, just functionally. And you know what? I have another thing to say.
There she goes.
You know, these sabbatical people, you know, they think, oh, they're so type A, they're so uptight. Some of us like being a spreadsheet nerd. You know, some of us enjoy calculating how much we spend on everything. Sometimes it's fun to like be frugal. It's like a season of frugality that it has its own joys. People play it out to be such a negative, but really it can be quite enjoyable.
You know, Sammy, I see you on the days when you are in your Google Docs, because for some reason you refuse to use spreadsheets, and you are calculating your net worth, and you're just getting in there. It is pure joy. So, look, don't let anybody tell you you're not having a good time if you're having a good time. Also, I'll add to that. If you like your job, like if you like your manager, you like the company that you're working for, you feel really fulfilled with your work, like genuinely, if you do, you don't necessarily have to take a break from it. When I was at my first sales job, I was there for 5 years and I really enjoyed it. Like, I was with a bunch of people my age. We became really good friends. I've gone to happy hours with them. I've gone to their weddings. Like, this was a really enjoyable time to me. Like, I think at that point, had you asked me, like, should you take a break? I would have been like, I'm making good money. My job, I'm really comfortable with my job. I like my people. Like, why would I take a break right now? Eventually, I did want a bigger challenge and I wanted to move on. So I did. But I think if you like your job, a lot of times it's hard to have everything line up. So don't feel like you have to leave too if you're having a good time.
That's so true, Michelle. And when I look at sabbaticals and I look at FIRE, at the end of the day, they both have a lot actually in common rather than things that bring them apart.
Oof.
For example, they both involve some degree of financial preparation in order to get your time back, whether that's for 1 month or if it's for your entire life. They both involve taking advantage of your income, taking advantage of your money so that you have freedom. And it's also all about living intentionally. One thing I really like about Donna and the sabbaticalproject.org is he actually has this really interesting sabbatical quiz, which is what kind of sabbatical person are you?
I really enjoyed that actually, Sammy, because going back to our original story with this beautiful woman in the winery who was traveling the world, when I took my sabbatical, I had no desire to travel the world. One, it was still a little bit kind of gray because it was just a year outside of the pandemic. But also, I knew I wanted to focus more on work. So I was actually, ironically, a little bit more of this achiever personality, but I wanted to transition my profession. I wanted to spend time with my loved ones. I didn't care so much about exploring new places. I had been happy with the travel I've done in my life.
Yeah, Michelle. And that's what DJ Donna talks about. He breaks the sabbatical types into 3, which is 1, the explorer, which is somebody who wants to explore new places and go try new things. Then there's the seeker, and that person is an inner seeker who wants to learn about themselves, who wants to kind of go into themselves. Reminds me of the Buddha, when he left his family.
The Buddha, you could argue, was on a very long sabbatical.
The Buddha's wife, where were you? I'm enlightened now. I was on sabbatical. No big deal.
The Buddha was also very rich, so you could also argue that he was fire.
Rich, but he didn't take his riches with him.
So
he was
true.
begging on the street.
Different. Okay, different.
And then the final type that they have is the achiever, who is actually leaving the workforce, but they are actually seeking achievement in their own means, with their own self. Whether that's becoming an awesome yoga teacher or starting their own company and taking off that way.
And the cool thing is he gives you different percentages. They do add up to more than 100.
Yeah, so you can tell he's not a fire type.
No shade. I think it's because you can choose more than one option. But Sammy was the one that pointed that out. She was like, I think these numbers are pretty high for percentages. But it's still a worthwhile quiz. I think it's really interesting to just have that perspective that there's different things you can do on your sabbatical too. You can have fun, you can explore, you can go under the Bodhi tree and get enlightened. It's up to you.
Takeaways.
So our takeaways for today. 1, both sabbaticals and FIRE are about making a plan to escape the rat race.
Exactly, Sammy. The advantages of a sabbatical are you don't need as much money saved up, and you can enjoy your life while you still have the ability to. Whatever age you are right now, you are the youngest you will ever be. So maybe it's the time to take advantage of that youth.
On the other hand, you have FIRE. And the advantages of that are you don't have to stress about money. You have a longer period of time to invest your money since you're investing earlier. And if it's difficult to re-enter your workplace, you have the advantage of surrendering to the workplace while you're there, getting deep in it, doing that work. And then once you leave, but you don't have to worry about coming back and having to relearn everything.
I really love this topic, Sammy, because when it comes to building a wealthy spirit, something we talk about is 1, getting your money right and being very intentional with your life. And so whichever path you end up choosing, whichever season of life you're in, we want to be able to help give you options so that you can prepare properly with your finances and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Not what my neighbors are doing, not what Michelle and Sammy are doing. This is what I like. And so hopefully we've given you some of those options today.
Community time!
Before we say goodbye, we wanted to invite you all to community time.
I gotta say, Sammy, when we were talking about our time at Artesa at the beginning, the winery where we had a wine club membership,
So great.
I was thinking about the guy who worked there who hated us. There was this older man, a short king, if you will, who I swear to God despised us.
Yes, he despised us 100%.
He was the guy. He was probably like, "This is a classy establishment, and I cannot believe we let these ladies come in."
He wanted to maintain the dignity of the environment. I felt like he felt that we were bringing it down. And maybe we were a little bit. We got this wine club membership because we were going up to Sonoma and Napa all the time with our friends who were visiting. And I don't remember exactly how much it cost, but it was a reasonable amount per quarter. And with the wine club membership, not only did you get shipped wines, but you got 4 free tastings every time you went.
Every time you went.
Yes.
Unlimited amount of times.
Yes. And you got 4 tours of the winery every time you went.
Which also included wine.
Yes. And you also got to sit in this special section of the winery designated for the wine club members.
And if you cannot tell, no matter what season of life we were in, your girls love a great deal.
Yeah, we're like, this is like the Costco of wine club memberships.
Which I am sure that man would hate. Because look, first off, we were there all the time. We're these tiny little brown girls who look very similar to each other. One time, I swear to God, we were trying to go into the special section and he was like, "This is for VIP members only." And I was like, "Yeah, we're VIP. Duh. I've seen you here all the time."
You're like, "We're here every weekend. Like, we're the only people fully utilizing the wine club membership. So you should probably remember us."
And then one time we were running late for the tour. So Sammy was like, "I'm just going to park and let you guys out." So we were trying to pull up by these like cones. And the guy literally runs out. He's waving his hands. He's like, "You can't park here. You can't park here." I was like, Jesus, does this guy watch out for your Honda Fit? Like, seriously.
And mind you, we had been on this tour so many times that we knew the tour like the back of our hand.
We were like laughing during it. We're like interrupting the tour guide. Like one time, I remember in this winery, because it was based off a winery in Spain, they had this music playing, which was monks singing to the wine. And so they said they did that every single time because it helps the wine somehow. And then one time during the tour, the music wasn't playing. So I was like, "Sir, excuse me, sir. I noticed that the monk music isn't playing."
That was like a big part of the tour. I'm like, these people are going to miss out on the whole monk music part of the tour.
I am not paying a good deal for this wine club membership to not have the monk. Now I know that this winery didn't have the monk singing. Like, Jesus, I don't want the next bottle.
I know. I remember one time I was with my friend Marcia and we went outside to take photos with our wine glasses.
Oh, because it was beautiful outside.
Oh, it's like the most beautiful winery.
When Sammy and I were looking for wineries, one of our criteria was Instagrammable, and this one, beautiful.
Exactly. Because we're taking our friends there. They obviously want to take Instagrams. Like, we're not trying to go to like the homely, like hole in the wall winery.
No. We want the view.
So I have my selfie stick out. I'm trying to take a photo of the two of us. And he's like, "You can't have wine glasses outside." Like, we were...
Apparently, if there were rules to this winery, which, let me tell you, nobody told them to us, okay, we broke them all. I think so much so that they probably raised the prices after. They were like, "We are not getting the clientele that we want." I'm sure they were happy when we like finally canceled our memberships because...
Yes, now we're sober.
Yeah, we don't come anymore, okay? So,
we don't need you.
We don't need you. So we would totally go back. It was lovely.
It was absolutely lovely.
Everyone else there loved us, I feel like.
Yeah, they did. They would always recognize us.
Yeah, they'd be like, "Hi, ladies," because we were there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot of fun. So let us know what you guys think. Don't forget, buildawealthyspirit.com. We have a Substack page now that you can comment on. We'll have a complimentary show notes with this episode. So check it out. It'll be in our show notes, but also buildawealthyspirit.com. Easy to remember.
And most importantly, be sure to join us next time as we put down the rule book and we rethink the status quo.